Well, good morning, Hollywood Time viewers. Today we welcome film review editor at The Wrap, author, podcaster, and creator of TCM Leading Ladies, Leading Men 2-in-1 Double-Sided Puzzle, Alonso Duralde. Hi, Alonso. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How's it going?
It's going good. We're here in Los Angeles. How about you?
I'm in West Hollywood.
Well, there you go. We could have just did this in face to face. Usually I get people.
No one does anything face to face anymore. Are you kidding?
What is it? The rest of our life by Zoom, right?
We only exist in this virtual space.
Well, sometimes it's kind of cool in a way because we kind of have a different. My background, of course, is the Hollywood Times, but your background is pretty cool. You've got quite a bit of books back there, and
Yeah, I mean, they've mainly just been a hassle to move over the years, but now at least I have, a great Zoom backdrop. So I guess it was all worth it.
there you go. You could.
Okay.
There we go. That's what happens when you touch your laptop.
There we go.
That'll always do it. Well, I have to tell you, I saw I love to write for TCM. I love everything TCM and their film festival, and one of the girls sent me, all these different things, and I saw this puzzle. I'm like, back up, what? Puzzle? No way. I go, send it, please, whatever. I'll pay for shipping. So I get this, and it consumed my life for the weekend, which was fine.
Oh, wow.
My boyfriend was okay with it. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to start out with the men's side because I recognize more of the men. So let's just do it. And it was very awesome. I'm telling you, it was exciting. It kept me there for hours, and and start out with the borders. And then after it was done, I'm like, yeah, I took pictures of before, during, and after. And then I broke it all up. My boyfriend's like, what'd you do that for? I said, because I have to do the ladies now. And for some reason, the ladies went quicker for me. And
Oh, wow.
when I was talking to your PR people, they said the ladies at the office took them forever. I said, oh, I loved it. I wanted to talk to you about, how did this idea come about doing a puzzle?
Well, Running Press reached out to me about it. That was something I guess the TCM folks had in mind that they wanted to put out because, one of the cool things about just this imprint in general, and I've worked with them on some other projects, is that like they do books, of course, but then they will also do kind of like, different sort of tie-in things for people who are fans who kind of want to have other experiences. And so I think the puzzle really falls into that category. But at the same time, it is this great sort of like celebration of the era that TCM mainly represents, and I mean, for me, putting it together, not literally, but I mean, like creating it and all, working with them on it was very much an educational process, and I hope that it is for folks as well. You talk about like, oh, I recognize a lot of these people, and maybe some of them you don't recognize, or maybe some of them there are facets of their career that you didn't know about that we can hopefully get into in the booklet. So yeah, they approached me about it. I went back and forth with people from the network with like, well, what about these men? What about these women? And we finally sort of nailed it down to the final 50 for each. And then I went through and wrote sort of mini biographies for all 100 artists who were featured in the puzzle. And that's in a cool little booklet that comes with it. So it was a cool project. I am obviously a classic movie fan. I love a jigsaw puzzle. So it all came together in a really great way.
And what was the idea of double-sided? I mean, instead of doing two separate ones.
Yeah, that was them as well. And I was like, okay, and I don't know that that's when I'm shopping for puzzles, the thought of a two-sided one is like a little past my degree of difficulty, but apparently it is sort of like the male side is more sort of the pieces are rounded and the female side is the flat side, so that kind of helps from a touch basis when you're figuring out which is which. So I have yet to tackle it myself. I need to sit down and actually do this puzzle at some point.
Are you kidding me? You haven't done the puzzle yet?
I know. I'm a bad co-creator, but yeah, I will get to it at some rainy weekend.
Yes, that's what you need. So as far as, did you choose? They choose the actual ladies and men that were in it?
Well, like I said, I think they handed me a list and were like, well, here's what we're thinking, and then I would sort of throw in some suggestions, and it kind of went back and forth, and we would see like, well, but yeah, and so it kind of came down to like, time period, but then also wanting to make sure that we were being as representative as possible and as diverse as possible, because I think a lot of for a long time, I think a lot of Hollywood histories tended to skew, very much in kind of a, white direction. And there are a lot of really important artists, who were essential to cinema in its sort of early to golden age period that didn't get as much attention. And so we wanted to make sure that those folks were represented in this cavalcade of stars that you see.
I know now I kind of have to figure out, how is it that they make puzzles? I'm assuming they take this big collage and then I got to look up like, how are puzzles made? Do you know?
I honestly have no idea. I'm imagining that, obviously the image gets printed onto cardboard, and then I'm sure there's just these machines that just ka-chunk, and cut all the puzzles out of it, or all the pieces.
Yeah, that's amazing. So are there plans on having a continuation of these, like other stars that didn't make it, or
I hope so. No one's reached out to me yet about it, but I think, yeah, there are so many people that you can include. I think that really had an impact. Certainly, like I said, in the back and forth, there were a lot of names that we threw around that certainly could have been considered and weren't. You could do a whole other one that's like 60s, 70s, and 80s stars. Directors. I, for one, would love to see a writer's puzzle, but the writers never get that kind of recognition. So no, I mean screenwriters, but yeah, I think the possibilities are endless. So ideally, if this one does well enough and they're like, okay, more of this, then I hope they call me back.
Well, we might be a little fish, but I want to be a whale and really put it out there. I think it's the perfect time too, because the holidays are coming up, and I think it's an amazing, puzzle. And I think there's so many people who, you start talking about TCM and they say, I watched that, and you wouldn't even imagine that they watch TCM. So it's like very cool. I think it'd be a great one to do. So let's also talk about your career. Where did that all start?
Oh man, I have been kind of a lifelong movie obsessive, and really, I think very early on, Siskel and Ebert's show on PBS debuted when I was like 8 years old, and I think very, very early I was like, oh wait, that's a job. You can watch movies for a living and then talk about them and write about them and have opinions. So there's this notion that film critics are all sort of frustrated filmmakers. We couldn't hack it as directors. We're like, no, I really genuinely always wanted to be a critic, and so I've always just kind of worked toward that. And over the course of my career, I've been a film critic. I have been a film festival programmer, which is kind of a side cousin job. And so, yeah, currently I'm at the Wrap, and I host several podcasts and get to do cool projects like this puzzle.
Very cool. That's a great career.
It's I didn't chase the money, and maybe I'll regret that one day. But I did. Yes, it was absolutely something that I love doing, and still do love doing it. So yeah, it's been an amazing run.
And then you're also an author as well, right? How many books?
I've written a couple of books myself. Most recently, Have Yourself a Movie Little Christmas, which is a guide to holiday films, which is Christmas is, right up there with movies as far as things I'm crazy about. So it was fun to get to put those together. And then most recently, I co-authored with the hosts of the Deck the Hallmark podcast, a book called I'll Be Home for Christmas Movies, which is a guide to Hallmark's Christmas movies. It's got more than 100 reviews from their podcast of those films, along with a guide to throwing your own Hallmark watching party and a history of Hallmark on TV, which goes all the way back to the 1950s, and a bingo card, all kinds of fun stuff. And that's actually where I started working with Running Press, who's also puts out all the TCM books.
Oh, that sounds like, now that's an amazing book. I didn't know about that one. I'm a huge Hallmark fan and I have
Oh,
lots
you
of,
should pick it up. I think you'd like it.
I got to get that one. And I'm going to promote the heck out of that one for you too.
Oh, great. Because, they rerun those. We're a month away from Countdown to Christmas. So once that starts 24/7. So pretty much all the movies that you read about in that book will be airing on the network.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. It's like it's hard to believe that it's going to be here any moment, So that's something else. And so what is it that you do at the Ramp?
I'm the film reviews editor, so I basically, I assign all of our film reviews and edit the, other writers and also write reviews myself, which is great. We just came through the Venice, Telluride, and Toronto Film Festival, so that's always just this like crazy influx of things coming in, at all hours of the day and night because they're in so many time zones. But so many movies that are going to be the subject of conversation for the next few months. It's really kind of where award season really launches, is those three film festivals. So in the past couple of weeks, like, we have put through so many reviews of new movies. It was exhausting but very exciting time. And it's I think the Wrap is a great site. It's the only one of the trades that is not owned by a company that is also in the entertainment industry. So we're really able to cover it in an objective way, I think, that is unique among publications like that. So I've been there for, going on close to 15 years now. And I have a really great crew of critics that I work with, and it's an amazing site. I'm thrilled to be able to work there.
Well, maybe to learn some tips from you. What is it that you do actually? Like, you go in and, do you do screeners at home? Do you go into the theater? Is it different for you doing it?
It depends. I mean, obviously during the lockdown, it was all links all the time. But I think now pretty much everybody's back to a regular schedule of doing screenings. So they'll hold advanced screenings for critics usually. Sometimes, sometimes they'll book a commercial theater. Sometimes it's in like a private screening room. We have a lot of them in like, Beverly Hills and
Yes.
Hollywood and stuff.
Yes.
And so it's just kind of, it's very much a calendar sort of thing, because you have to sort of look at what's coming out this month, and then also what are the embargoes, because even though they'll show you a movie 2 weeks in advance, maybe they don't want the reviews to run until 2 days in advance of the opening. So you have to kind of make sure you're not stepping on anybody's toes with that stuff. So it is, there's a chunk of it that is organizational, which has never been my strong suit, but I managed to pull that off, I guess. But a lot of it is creative and sort of matching the right films to the right voices, and having I've got a really wonderful pool of critics that are not only really talented but very diverse. And so, like, I know that, say, Carlos Aguilar, who is a terrific writer, and he writes for the New York Times and the LA Times, and I'm thrilled to have him working with us. I knew that his take on the new Iñárritu movie that was premiering at Venice was going to be unique and valuable, because it's a film about being a Mexican artist but also having a life in the United States. And Carlos is a dreamer, and was born in Mexico, lives in Los Angeles now. So I knew that that sort of cross-cultural perspective he would really have great insight on. And so it's wonderful to be able to go through films and be like, I know this person is going to have something really interesting to say about this movie. And we've certainly been making an effort to up the number of women we have reviewing movies, because I think for a long time they were very underrepresented in the field of film criticism. You see those like Annenberg studies and stuff. So I'm really proud to have a lot of women writing for me who are great, and I'm delighted that I can include their voices as well. So it's management, and it's also I write myself and do stuff. So there's a lot happening there, but it's a dream job. I love to get to do what I do.
So as a film critic, do you go in, got a notepad, or is it all from your memory? And then when you're done, and are you honest, as if it's horrible, do you say it's horrible, or do you?
For sure. Yeah, no,
Okay.
I
Okay.
think the honesty is like an essential part of this. If you can't really express your thoughts, and I mean, you know, it's not just a question of going in, it stinks, you know, like you have to back it up and,
Okay.
you know, talk about why. But you know, I think you
Yeah.
need to be honest with your opinions, or you don't have integrity as a writer. I'm not a note taker myself, just because I've
Okay.
noticed that if I'm busy taking notes, I'll miss something.
Yeah.
So I just try to, like, if somebody says something really great that I want to quote later, I'll just make it a point to really try and remember that line. But for the most part, I find it easier to just sort of engage directly, and it keeps me, you know,
Yeah.
I think more into it. Other people take notes, and everybody's got their own different way of doing it, and I get it. You know, it's just a thing you kind of have to figure out doing it on your own.
Yeah, because I've been, doing a lot of red carpets and all of that other stuff. That went
Mhm.
away. So I started doing Zooms with like
Right.
singer-songwriters because I really like
Oh,
that.
neat.
Yeah, I love it. And mostly country music because that's what I like. But it's like I'm starting to get pitches for movies. And I really, the bad thing about it is I love movies and I'm just so, and I'm trying to figure out how to do critique, movies. I'm like, here I am like you. I'm right, not like you, but writing notes. I'm like, oh, I got to rewind it. That's all.
I, I will say this. I think it's a challenge, and I'm really glad that the rap doesn't put me in this position. I think it's tricky for entertainment journalists to be critics and to do interviews, because if you are a critic and you're honest about things, and then you have to, you know, that's how it should be. But if you also have to be worried, oh, I can't offend this studio or this filmmaker, it's going to be
Oh,
awkward the
I
next time
know.
we sit down to chat. Those are two hats that I think nobody should be forced to wear, you
Oh,
know. So I think, like, let critics be critics, let them talk about films in the way they want to talk about them, and then let entertainment journalists who do the interviews, like, be in that space and have those relationships, and not have to worry about risking those relationships by writing a review that might bother somebody.
oh, there you go. You answered my, been worried about that because I'm like, oh my gosh, how can I be honest about that?
Yeah, I mean, look, again, I have the luxury of, like, I work at at an outlet that has a big enough staff that they can divvy that stuff out, and so I think people have to kind of figure out for themselves. Either they pick a lane or they sort of try and juggle those two things, and
Yeah.
sometimes that means being honest and maybe risking your access to something, you know, or maybe it just means, like, not reviewing stuff and just sort of leaning into the interview personality stuff, and then that way nobody's feathers get ruffled. It's a tricky thing, and I think most publications sort of understand that and don't try and throw that all onto one person.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. Wow. So what are your podcasts?
Well, let's see. I do a podcast called Linoleum Knife with my husband Dave White, and we're about to turn 12. Yeah, we're both film critics. I think we might be currently the only married professional film critics in America, but don't quote me on that.
A little bit.
Uh, anyway, yeah, you'll hear from the ones who are. Yeah, otherwise, I'm sure you'll get letters. No, so that's a weekly podcast where we talk about new movies, and you know, we really go out of our way to try and cover as broad a spectrum as possible, from, like, the big major releases to, you know, smaller foreign films that are maybe on, like, two screens but are really great and worth discussing. And you know, I think obviously during lockdown everything was streaming, and so if you had a high-speed internet, you could access, you could live in a tiny town in Indiana and see the same movies that would be normally just opening in New York and LA. And nowadays, even, I think, if we talk about a small movie that's barely in theaters in a month, it will be streaming everywhere and you can rent it or whatever. So, you know, we try and shine a light on those films as well. I have a show called Maximum Film. It's on the Maximum Fun Network with Ify Wadaway and Drea Clark. And the premise is that it's a film review show that isn't just a straight white male perspective, because there's a lot of that in the podcast world. No offense to those folks. They're lovely. So, you know, we try and look at movies from a different angle. And then Christy Lemire and I do a show called Breakfast All Day, and sometimes with Matt Atchity and sometimes with Ben Mankiewicz from TCM. We all used to do a show called What the Flick several years back, and then that network canceled it, but we decided we wanted to keep the band together. So we started our own thing called Breakfast All Day, and it's a podcast, and it's also on YouTube. And then also the Deck the Hallmark podcast, the guys that I wrote I'll Be Home for Christmas movies with. I pop in periodically to talk about classic Christmas movies, or right now we're doing a cycle where we're talking about 2021 made for TV Christmas movies that we didn't get to in 2021, and they're all sort of streaming on different outlets like Peacock and BET Plus. So yeah, I if anybody listens to all of those shows and is sick of the sound of my voice, I hear you.
You got a great voice. Do you ever
Thank
sleep?
you. Every so often I try and squeeze in a little. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, you keep yourself so busy.
I mean, I think that's sort of the nature of freelancing, and especially I think most film critics that I know don't have like a 9 to 5 gig for one publication. They, sort of cobble together a lot of different gigs and mini gigs, and so that's how we stay afloat.
So do you also get to travel a lot?
It's been a while. I was going to go to the Venice Film Festival this year for the first time since 2019, and then I got COVID for the first time, which I had managed to avoid. Thank you. Yes, I'm much feeling better now. So I didn't get to go this year, but I'm hoping that it'll happen in 2023. That's my big travel of the year. Generally, I haven't been to Sundance in a while. I've been to Toronto in quite a while. I've never been to Cannes. But again, we have one of the cool things with the Wrap is we have a few people who do go, and they do a lot of coverage from the ground. And some of the freelancers that I work with that are in the pool of writers that we have are based in Europe. So it's very easy for them to go to Venice or Cannes or wherever. And so, they'll, if there's a movie that, for example, Ticket to Paradise, the George Clooney, Julia Roberts movie, just premiered in London and is already showing in Europe like a month before it gets here. So luckily I had like a couple of people in London where I could say, can you go see this and review it? So we're covered even if I'm not there personally.
It sounds like you do have a great pool.
Definitely.
So what is your social media? Our viewers can find you.
Sure. I'm at A Duralde on Twitter, AD as in David, URALDE, and then at Linoleumcast on Instagram, and that's mostly where I post stuff. And yeah, definitely my Twitter. Whether it's my podcasts or reviews or book stuff, whatever, I post it all there. So yeah, come check it out.
Sounds good. You have any closing words for us?
Just if you're a puzzle fan, if you're a movie fan, I think you'll enjoy this puzzle a lot. And if you are a Christmas movie fanatic, definitely follow me on Twitter. It's a subject I come back to a lot.
Definitely going to push that puzzle. And I want to see a picture of it when you get it done.
Yes, ma'am.
We appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.